Okay, I have a new book by Antony Beevor. The newest book came out in 2022 last year. Russia, Revolution and Civil War, 1917 to 1921. I got this. This is a British copy. I got this before it even came out in the U.S., but they have free shipping, and they gave me a signed copy, and I thought that's pretty cool. But this book is, I'd say, probably the most lurid violence of any of Beevor's books. This is the bloodiest and the darkest, I guess, even more so than Stalingrad or something like that. Just in terms of there just aren't that many bright spots in this book, and however many, I mean, most of Antony Beevor's other books are World War II, or he did a Spain book. But when the Russians show up, it's always I mean, like I was just talking about the D-Day book, which is cool, and so you have the Americans in there, you have good guys in there, and even in like the Stalingrad book, the Russians just don't seem that, even you'd figure they should be more like the good guys, but Beevor's books are a lot of his books are banned in Russia, and Stalingrad is banned in Ukraine as well, because it depicts the Ukrainians working for the SS, and mentions how brutal they were, all, and so forth. But they should unban that book. But so Zelensky unbanned that book, because Antony Beevor is pretty top notch in my opinion. This book, like I say, it's not. It's very colorful, but it's maybe not. It doesn't seem like a lot of fun, and that there just aren't that many characters. Because even the bad guys, I mean, if you, sorry, I mean, it's just when it's the Russians, the way it's like reading the old lurid anti-communist literature and so forth. But it's just stories about what the Soviet Union was like, and so this is beginning with the Russian Revolution, however, so it's all Russian. And the White Russians, I don't think, come off very good in this book. And I mean, I think the facts are there, and it is a central theme of the book that the White Army blundered the whole thing. A lot of this is also foreign involvement. Let's say Winston Churchill, and also Americans showed up in a limited incursion, but a lot of the whole like the White Army is a lot of it is being envisioned by Churchill and so forth in this book, and it just doesn't really work out. And you could see how it's just the pieces aren't going to fall into place. But pretty much everybody in the book is. You could see how, I mean, the events in this book are important to get down. This is where the 20th century kind of kicked off. Even with World War I, you'd say maybe is the end of kind of the old order. And this is what kind of shocked and horrified the world, and maybe some. I mean, at the beginning, people are looking at this as, that socialism in Russia will not work because it's not a modern society. You can't apply Marxism to it. It didn't make any sense. And people all kind of figured it would just be a bloodbath. And of course it was. And without even getting into the ideology of it, this book covers the characters behind it. And I think none of the reactionaries really impressed me in the book. And I think some of the Bolsheviks and the revolutionaries seem more impressive. Leon Trotsky, Dzerzhinsky, Nestor Makhno, and even Lenin. And part of this book is it goes into kind of how Lenin showed up, which I've always thought was kind of a German special operation. Because Lenin was sent to Russia after an initial revolution with Kerensky, who was not an impressive revolutionary figure, and Lenin took over the whole thing and actually took them out of the war. But the Germans made it happen with a train and so forth. And this book covers after that how Lenin was seen as like a German plant by some, or they had a lot of money for they had like printing presses and things that made them a powerful political force on the ground. But where that money was coming from was the Germans were financing and backing a lot of the early Bolsheviks just because it meant knocking Russia out of the war, out of World War One, which is a war that Russia lost. Is they've only, as much as they might want to act like they don't really lose, but they do lose, and they lost to Japan right before, and so on and so forth. But this book kind of lays it out that Russia definitely had an old order that was in charge, and that these people were wiped out with what was considered a class warfare. And Beevor calls it class genocide, but whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was definitely an extermination, what happened to the old nobility of Russia. And so you get, but you get a different picture of different kind of factions as well. And the book goes outside of Russia. It goes into Poland, and there's, Azerbaijan, there's Kurds in the book, and there's plenty of pogroms, and it shows how there were these anti-Semitic pogroms where a lot of Jews in Russia are killed, and they're committed really by all sides, even by the Bolsheviks. We're just as anti-Semitic in certain ways, even if they had a lot of Jewish people. But you could actually see why, partly at least, why so many Jews would end up in their ranks. But it shows how this Russia is traditionally anti-Semitic, and it goes into a lot of the commissars, and there are a lot of Jewish people in the Bolshevik ranks, and it goes into why and so forth, and different motivations. I think especially though, Leon Trotsky seems like impressive, and even though nothing really good came for a lot of these people, except for someone like Dzerzhinsky. It shows the Cheka and how this institution kind of what evolved from there, and how this kind of presaged like Holocaust type stuff, how the kind of mass extermination that the Bolsheviks were doing was kind of, in a way similarly patterned to like what happened after kind of came from this. And you can see like a lot of ideology draws back to this period. So it is or how it was formed, like because Europe reacted and America reacted to these events in different ways. And I mean, this eventually led to the Cold War, and this is a lot of what we're dealing with now still. So a lot of the 20th century is directly, comes from these events where people see, certain people are thinking that maybe Russia could be like this next level new world. I mean, it was like a new thing, what they're trying with implementing communism and so forth. And the whole thing was just a bloodbath right from the start. Like I say, this is a very violent book. I mean, people are getting killed in this book like crazy, just because it's all more or less Russian or something like that. There's Ukrainians. I think Nestor Makhno's anarchist. This is an anarchist Ukrainian with the Tachankas, the machine gun chariots, where they like horse-drawn machine gun carriages. And but I think this is a pretty impressive guy, even if in the end the cause he's fighting for was really for no reason, because he allies with the Bolsheviks. They immediately crush him after they beat the white army together. So it's kind of like all that for nothing, even if you're more or less on the winning side up until that. Because even everyone else who's not a Bolshevik is considered some kind of fascist or reactionary kulak or something like that. It goes into how a lot of the people who are killed by the communists they're actually just like peasants who are angry at what the communists are doing, because they're taking all their livestock and they're taking everything from them, and treating them, in different ways, and people rage at that. They're just labeled as counter-reactionary, like a political enemy every time. A lot of the stuff is well known. A lot of people are going to be very familiar with these kind of events, but these are confusing. There's just so many different kind of factions and things like that, and so it's always good to brush up on the stuff. And I think it'll have different kind of anecdotes that you might not have heard before. Different, like it kind of might flesh out some of your understanding of certain events just by the amount of kind of. It's a reasonably thorough, pretty big book, but it goes over all kinds of firsthand accounts of events and a lot of just different kinds of horrific atrocities. So it really is like a parade of atrocities, and it gives you kind of a good glimpse into the Russian character. But this book came out right at the right time. It came out last year, where all this is very relevant, and there's all kinds of horrifying stuff coming out of Russia again, and also a lot of the kind of disinformation, because you could see how the way that these people lie, even how the reactionaries will make stuff up, the Black Hundreds and so forth, and obviously the Bolsheviks will lie and twist just about everything. And at some point, it's not just it's part of the character of these people, whoever, and it's not it's not like it's a totally different people in charge of Russia now. These are, the Bolsheviks are pretty much the grandfathers of what we're seeing right now. But you get a good sense of what they're about, a lot of the violence and the kind of lying and the untrustworthiness and so forth with these different people. I mean, they all like end up killing each other. You see what happened to Trotsky and so forth in the end. it doesn't seem to pay to throw in your lot. This book also covers it gives actually it goes into like a Kiev when the Germans are occupying the city, and it is kind of like a Weimar, like a Weimar Kiev, where it's not a good portrait. I mean, it's not like it's not a flattering portrait. You know, there's a lot of partying going on and prostitution, and like a lot of the white army soldiers are more interested in partying over in Kiev and so forth than actually fighting in the Russian Civil War. And in say Petrograd, there's maybe similar kind of stuff where Bolshevik commissars have like harems of women and prostitutes and cocaine and okay. I mean, the book really gets into the nitty gritty with a lot of the stuff. Like they're like the Bolsheviks and they're arranging like orgies in the Tsarist palaces and so forth, and just it's yeah, all kinds of just craziness, and there's plenty of stuff that might disgust you in this book, but it's all factual, and so it's good even just as a military history, and it gives a very good broad view of this whole Civil War, and it gives I like a lot of the anecdotes and different firsthand accounts, but yeah, I didn't think any of the White Army guys, Rangel or Kolchak or Denikin, like and I don't think any of them really looked that good, and they just all the thesis of the book is that they're just inflexible in their doctrine and also in what they want of the outcome for the war, which is very much the old Russian Empire, and also just that they there's no unity of command whatsoever. So it's just all kinds of different factions arguing and people who aren't really in it all that much. The White Army morale was a lot lower in general than what any of the revolutionaries had, where a lot of these guys were pumped up and they would bring different guys in. Like Lenin would bring Latvians in and so forth. And he had naval infantry and things that were real hitters for the Bolsheviks. But the book is if you don't have a stomach for this kind of stuff, you I don't know. It's definitely, if you're not familiar with this history, it would be a good place to start, because you probably should be familiar with it. Like I said, it's however much came from the Russian Revolution. You know, World War II proceeds right from it, and so the Cold War, and then the whole war that we have now is still related, you know, very close. I mean, you're going over the same cities and kind of stuff with in this book, but it's another good it's another good Beevor book. But yeah, like I say, like it's all Russia, so like other Beevor books, the Russians show up and it's bad news. It's going to be just stuff about people killing each other for whatever reason, and this book is just all Russia. But I mean, these are it's facts. This book is full of facts, so you could argue with it or what, but I think it's pretty dead on, and it's an entertaining read. It's just it's a very horrific book. Like I'd say the essential Antony Beevor books would be the Stalingrad book, the Berlin book, and then I'd also add the Normandy book I just talked about. Those are, but and those ones, you know, like when the Russians show up, it's going to be bad news. And so this is all Russian. It's all bad news. No, I don't. It's it is just it's a dark book, like in ways that the Normandy book, and even if people are getting bombed out and blown to bits or they're, you know, whatever, it's not quite like this where people are just being hauled off and shot all over, and there's all kinds of weird stuff. But this is a very relevant history, so good on Beevor. This is definitely worth reading for anyone who likes Beevor, or if you're a fan of especially the like Stalingrad or something, then you'll probably think this is a pretty cool book. And like I said, it just levels up in it levels up in the violence, but it's a good book. Check it out. It's Russia by Antony Beevor, Revolution and Civil War, 1917 to 1921, and pretty much goes from Russians lose in World War One to Russians lose in Poland with Miracle on the Vistula River, and so it is a pretty wide. It's a wider scope than just Russia. But yeah, check it out. All right.